Hello and welcome back to Popcorn Chat. I hope you guys are doing well. In this week's video we're going to be looking at the world of American Psycho and looking at its various adaptations from the book to the film to the stage musical. So my first introduction to this world was through the film, and I saw that maybe sort of 2012, 2013, and then I went and saw the West End musical around 2013, 2014 I think it was. And then after that I came back and I read the book for the first time in 2014. So now I'm going to break down the three different types of media of American Psycho and talk about some of my favourite things and some of my least favourite things about those. So let's start with the source material, which is the book, which originally came out in 1991 and was written by Bret Easton Ellis. So if you don't know the story about American Psycho, it looks at the sort of 1980s Wall Street businessmen in New York and the lifestyle that they love, the lifestyle of luxury, and it sort of takes it to the extreme with Patrick Bateman, who we follow, who is our protagonist, who has this sort of killing rampage, weaved into his life amongst very sort of 80s high-tech music, fashion, all of these elements. So it's a very interesting look into that sort of culture. So when I first read the book, I don't remember much about it, but there was one scene that really stuck out to me. I'm not going to go into it here because it is absolutely graphic, and I'm glad they didn't put it into the film. But generally the book itself is a lot more graphic and a lot more violent in its descriptions, both of killing and sort of the treatment of women. Definitely, it's a lot more violent. So if I were to rate this book, I would say it's an 18, definitely, in terms of the content. So if you find that sort of thing quite hard to read, maybe this isn't the sort of book for you, but it's definitely a lot more violent than the film. Alongside that, there's a lot of sort of homophobic slurs, racist slurs, a lot of derogatory terms towards women, especially in this book. And it's, like I said, it's very graphic in its description and the hatred towards various groups of minorities. What I do love about this book is that it really sets up the context of the world, and that if you read this, 100 years in the future or 100 years in the past, you would know what this kind of world is like. It's very heavy on its description, but not overbearing. But you have a clear image of the what they're wearing and all the description of that. You got the music, the food, all the relationships, the dancing, the world of business. So you're able to paint a very clear picture within your mind through Ellis's writing and his use of social commentary and relevant characters to the time, such as Donald Trump when he was a businessman, and Tom Cruise. And I thought that was really interesting that they used Tom Cruise, because Christian Bale said when he was looking at the character Bateman, he used an example of Tom Cruise during an interview on David Letterman and the coldness and the deadness behind his eyes. So I thought it was quite interesting that the fact that Tom Cruise is in the book and Christian Bale used that as a reference. So that's just a little detail for you. But yeah, I love the whole social commentary, setting up the world of the 80s. It's really well established in the book. One of the things which I prefer about the book compared to the film and the musical adaptation is we get to understand Patrick Bateman as a character. We get to know his daily routine, be it going to the gym, talking about Whitney Houston, or killing someone. We get much more detail, much more depth, and just a better insight, which I know you're not going to get in a film just because of time, but I think we get to understand that character much more in the book. So the film adaptation of the book came out in 2000 and it was directed by Mary Harron. One of the positives of the adaptation of the book into a film, and directed by Mary Harron especially, is that she's able to contain the violence which is heavily depicted within the book, and is able to do it in a more accessible way and more contained way compared to the book. It's the book would put a lot of people off. I think there was a bit of trouble with it getting made in the first place, the film. But I think what Mary Harron is able to do in terms of toning down the violence, not using those racial, homophobic slurs, is a lot more accessible and gets us to understand the characters just as well. I do have to say it was brilliant casting in this film. I think Christian Bale gives one of his best performances within this film, and really sets the bar, and it's been emulated in many of the films and other pop culture references. Even Reese Witherspoon being cast as Evelyn is a brilliant decision, and when I was reading the book the second time round, already seen the film a few years ago, I had her face sort of pictured as that character throughout the book, and I think she was a perfect casting for that role. So let's move on to the musical. Now, I saw the musical, like I said, sort of, it was between 2013 and 2014, I'm not too sure. So I saw it at the Almeida Theatre in London. I think it's in Islington, if anyone knows that. And I think it was either on Broadway first and then it came to London, or vice versa. And I will be honest and say that I went to go and see this because Matt Smith was in it. And when I was younger, I was a very big Doctor Who fan, so I wanted to go and see this for him. And ultimately, I ended up loving it. I'm always someone that sort of keeps programmes when I go to events like this, but there's certain details, like you wouldn't have got this in the book, but I'm not sure if you guys can see, but it's the map, and obviously the red sort of blood spots are showing where Patrick has done his murders. So I thought that was really interesting and gives you sort of a scale of it. And as you can see here, there's a few sort of press photos, very on brand with the 1980s sharp suits and everything like that. The staging was really, really cool, and they did some really, really good things. The card scene you see quite early on in the film, they do that really, really well, and they sort of lift the tables up and the screen was projected, so it really depicted that moment really intensely. And in fact, there was a specific song about the cards, was brilliant, and the soundtrack is amazing. If you haven't listened to it, it is available on Spotify, so I highly recommend. I mean, I have some of the tracks on there on my playlist. Like, I have those songs stuck in my head, and I saw that, 7 years ago. From my obsession of both the American Psycho world and Matt Smith, I was introduced to this, and I was glad I saw it. I think it was a really good adaptation of both book and film, and they pulled it off, in my opinion. So we're going to do something a little bit different in terms of rating. So instead of just rating the film, this time I'm going to rate all 3 different pieces of material. So I'm going to give the book 4 out of 5 stars. So I'm going to give the film 3.5 stars out of 5. So I'm going to give the musical 3 stars out of 5. It's clear to say that I had a little bit of an obsession with the world of American Psycho in 2014. And reading the book for the second time, can I just say it's the only book I've read twice. And coming back to it now, 7 years later, after originally reading it, I definitely have a much broader understanding of the world, of the commentary and the types of people that are in this book, all the sort of references, looking at certain characters, appearances from Donald Trump, etc. So it's interesting coming in with fresh eyes and a different perspective as to when I originally read it and originally saw the film. If you've seen the film and you've not read the book, I would definitely recommend it. But like I said, there are a few sort of triggers within there with slurs, violence, sort of violence towards women. So if you sort of look past that, look at the social commentary, I think you'll find it very interesting. And I think it'll add something different to the next time when you watch the film. And as for the musical, I don't think you can see it anywhere. I don't think there's anything like that online. But as for the soundtrack, you can definitely listen to it on Spotify. So if you do listen to it, do let me know what your favourite songs are and we can have a little chat about that soundtrack. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon for another popcorn chat.